Thank you very much for being with us. Let's bring you the breaking news coming out of Geneva. The United States is pulling out of the UN Human Rights Council. US Ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, made the announcement. Haley criticising the UN Human Rights Council as a hypocritical and self-serving organisation that makes a mockery of human rights. It follows speculation that President Trump is unhappy over the Council's alleged anti-Israel stance. The United States is halfway through a 3-year term on what is the main UN rights body. It was reported last week that activists and diplomats said talks with the US on reforms had failed to meet Washington's demands.
We take this step because our commitment does not allow us to remain a part of a hypocritical and self-serving organization that makes a mockery of human rights. Almost every country we met with agrees with us, in principle and behind closed doors, that the Human Rights Council needs major, dramatic, systemic changes. Yet no other country has had the courage to join our fight.
Nikki Haley speaking there in Geneva just a few moments ago. We then heard from our correspondent in Geneva, John Zarakostas.
The implications are that the Western group, of which the United States was a member of the current council, will have to find another state to replace the United States, and that will have to go through a vote in the UN General Assembly in New York to select the replacement country for the United States for the 1.5-year remaining period that the US had to serve in the 3-year rotation of its term as a member of the Council. So that will be worked out among the Western group of countries. But the bigger question is, what will it mean with the United States pulling out? There's two schools of thought. Speaking to members of the Council earlier this evening in anticipation of this, some said that it will do more damage to the United States not being a player in the Council. It will be having less of an effect to shape events in the Council. Others are saying that the exit of the United States will get the others to galvanize to save the institution. The third option is that powerful countries with leverage will fill in the void, countries like China. And already China has been very forceful in the Council on many issues that it objects to. So there'll be probably, with the exit of the US, less of a voice for human rights in the Council on a universal level.
Is there anything in what the US is saying about the what its criticisms of the Council, John? Obviously, Haley there saying that it's hypocritical, self-serving, a mockery of human rights, and citing the fact that some of the worst abusers, her words, are actually part of it.
Yeah, well, that's the way the Council members elect the membership. Each regional grouping has representatives. Africa has 13 members, Asia Pacific also 13, Eastern Europe 6, Western group 7, and the Latin Americans 8. So they elect, and then the people put forward get the vote. But the big issue is, and the US has been consistent in this, that there is a so-called Item 7 agenda item, and that is uniquely for Israel, criticizing Israel, and it's based on the occupied Palestinian and other Arab territories, and that's in every council session. And the United States and Israel have wanted that issue, that agenda item, to be scrapped, and Israel to be addressed like other countries under Item 4, which is for any issue of concern on human rights. That has not, the US has been unable to get that support to scrap that issue. And that is the biggest issue of concern. And it's not only the Trump administration, Secretary of State Kerry in the Obama administration was also critical when he addressed the Council a few years ago on that very issue. And the concerns of the US go back to the creation of the new council back in 2006. At the time, the United States voted against the creation of the new council because it considered that countries without a democratic track record would be members, and also it was concerned about the bias against Israel. At the time, the ambassador in the UN was John Bolton, who today is the national security advisor of President Trump. So there is a person in the White House who has very good knowledge of this issue, and it adds to the concerns of Ms. Haley. And also, she was flanked by Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who said the bias against Israel is unconscionable. So Israel was really the focal point here, although human rights groups have criticized the U.S. for pulling out and saying the Council has done good work, and it has. You've had excellent reports on human rights violations in North Korea. You have the Independent Commission of Inquiry on Human Rights Violations in Syria, and you have had special sessions on other violations. You've had 5 special sessions on Syria, sessions on human rights violations in Burundi, in the Congo, in Sri Lanka, and other trouble spots around the world.
John Sarikostas there in Geneva, reaction to the breaking story here about the UN Human Rights Council, the United States deciding to pull out of that. Nikki Haley, the UN ambassador, the US ambassador to the United Nations, making that announcement just moments ago in Geneva. There's been comment, of course, from the higher echelons of the UN on this one, from Secretary General Antonio Guterres. And let's hear now from the UN Human Rights Chief himself, that is Prince Zayed bin Rad, speaking via social media.
Disappointing, if not really surprising news. Given the state of human rights in today's world, the US should be stepping up, not stepping back.
Stepping up, not stepping back, the words of the UN Human Rights Chief Prince Zayed al-Rad. Will bring you more reaction to this breaking news, the US pulling out of the UN Human Rights Council. Next, Donald Trump faces a showdown with members of his own party who are concerned about the treatment of child migrants in the US. While top administration officials have stood by Trump's zero-tolerance policy, insisting children are being held in humane conditions, criticism has swelled from international rights groups, Christian evangelicals and former US First Ladies, as well as the president's own party. Lawmakers who visited minors in detention in Texas and California have described crying children held in cage-like conditions behind chain-link fencing, with no idea when they'll see their parents again. The scandals deepened for Trump after the leaking of a recording of children screaming for their parents while being held in a cage. For more on this now, from Washington, David Smith.
He's a president well known, of course, for not doing U-turns or ever backing down. Indeed, his hallmark is always just to dig in his heels further, and we saw that throughout the presidential election campaign and since he reached the White House. However, there is a sense that something here has to give, that this is not like those other examples, in that there has just been such a tremendous outcry in the United States and beyond. Every living former First Lady, human rights campaigners, political commentators, churches, including some who are normally aligned with Donald Trump, and of course his own Republican Party, where the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell today was saying that every Republican member of the Senate favors some sort of quick solution to end these separations. And I would suspect something will be done, perhaps resolved in this meeting tonight between Trump and Republicans. This is one where it doesn't look like he's going to win, although they may try and find a solution that allows him to claim some sort of symbolic victory.
David Smith there in Washington.